You notice it in the smallest moments. It's not a dramatic explosion or a screaming fight. It happens when the text message sits there for 3 hours, and you've read it, but your thumb just hovers over the keyboard, and then you lock the phone. It happens when someone says, "I want to see you again this weekend." And instead of feeling a flutter in your chest, you feel a strange tightening in your throat, and the first thought that surfaces is, "I'm actually pretty tired this week." You've watched yourself do this from a strange distance, as if you're a passenger in your own body. Things are fine. Things are actually good. And then the good starts to feel a little too solid and a little too real, and you find yourself mentally stepping backward, even while your body stays in the chair, smiling at them. And the most confusing part is that you don't want to be alone.
You feel the ache of loneliness, just like anyone else. You crave closeness, and you imagine conversations where you're truly seen. But when that closeness arrives on your doorstep in the form of a real person with real expectations and a real future, you suddenly feel like the walls of the room are moving inward. This isn't a conscious choice. You don't wake up and decide to sabotage a good thing. It's more like a reflex. It's the flinch before the touch, even though the hand reaching for you is gentle. And when you try to explain this feeling to yourself, the language fails you. You say things like, "I just need space," or "I move slower than other people." But underneath those polite excuses, there's a quieter, more disorienting question that hums in the back of your mind. If I let this get real, will I still recognize myself?
And the silence that follows that question is what we need to sit with for a moment. Because that silence isn't emptiness. That silence is the sound of a very old piece of internal architecture adjusting itself to protect you from a danger it remembers, but you have forgotten. You see, we tend to think of identity as a fixed photograph, but your brain treats identity more like a balancing act. In psychological terms, there is something called self-concept clarity. It's how solidly and consistently you know who you are. For many of us, that self-concept was forged in a specific kind of quiet or a specific kind of distance. Maybe you grew up in a house where closeness meant criticism, or where love was a currency that had to be earned through performance. Maybe you learned early that being alone was the only time you could truly exhale. When you were young, that distance wasn't a flaw. It was an intelligent adaptation. It was the mind's way of building a soundproof room in a noisy house. The problem arises years later when you're sitting across from someone who is safe and present, and they say, "I feel really close to you right now." To them, it's a gift. To your brain's limbic system, it's a data anomaly. Because your brain built its entire map of the world on the assumption that intimacy equals erosion. If I let you in, I will lose the quiet. If I merge my world with yours, I will disappear into your needs, and my own edges will blur. This is not a sign that you are broken or that you lack the capacity for love. This is a sign that your brain has a hyperactive surveillance system when it comes to threat detection in social bonds. The neurobiology here is clear. When the relationship shifts from the abstract idea of connection to the concrete reality of obligation, the amygdala doesn't light up with fireworks of joy. It lights up with a dim yellow caution light. It's scanning for the catch. It's waiting for the other shoe to drop. And because your conscious mind can't find a logical reason to be wary, the body invents one. We call this discomfort anxiety, or the sudden and specific urge to reorganize the garage at 10 p.m. instead of returning a phone call. There is a metaphor that helps visualize this. Imagine you are a deep-sea fish that has evolved to live under immense pressure at the bottom of the ocean. The weight of the water doesn't feel heavy to you because it's all you've ever known. It's just the texture of existence. Now, imagine someone pulls you up toward the surface, where the light is warm and the view is beautiful. But as you rise, the pressure drops. Your body, which was perfectly calibrated for the deep, starts to swell and distort.
It's not that the surface is dangerous. It's that the surface is different. And the internal system that kept you alive at the bottom is now screaming decompression sickness. You pull away because the lightness of being truly seen feels like a threat to the structure of the self you built to survive the dark. But knowing why you pull away is only half the distance. The other half is learning how to hold still in that rising current without letting the panic make you swim back down before you've even seen the view.
This requires a new kind of mental model, one that isn't based on the binary of open versus closed, but on something much more fluid. Think of it as the perimeter versus the core. Most of us treat our inner world like a house with one front door. You're either inside with us or you're locked out on the porch. But what if we reimagine the self as having a spacious garden around the house? There is a gate and there is a path. There is a yard where you can sit with someone and talk about the weather and the way the light hits the leaves. That yard is still you. It's not fake, but it's not the bedroom where you go to be alone with the weight of your own thoughts. You can invite someone into the garden of your life without handing them the keys to the entire house, and that is not a betrayal of intimacy.
That is the definition of healthy differentiation. The first practical step is to practice naming the sensation in the body before you act on the impulse. When you feel that urge to cancel plans or to respond with a cold one-word answer, pause and place a hand on your sternum. Say to yourself, not to them, just to the part of you that is panicking. This is the feeling of pressure changing. I am not in danger. I am just rising. This works because of a process in the prefrontal cortex called affect labeling. When you put language to a raw emotional state, you activate the executive function of the brain, which dampens the alarm signal of the amygdala. You are not suppressing the fear. You are simply introducing a translator between the frightened child in the deep sea and the adult who knows the difference between a hand reaching out to drown you and a hand reaching out to hold you.
The second step is to use what's called a calibrated disclosure schedule. Instead of the all or nothing approach most people use, give yourself permission to drip connection rather than flood it. The next time you feel the walls closing in, instead of canceling the date, say something that feels small but true. You might say, I'm not great at responding right away sometimes, but I'm glad we're doing this. You are not lying. You are not pretending to be an extrovert. You are simply opening the gate to the garden without unlocking the front door. From a behavioral psychology standpoint, this is classic exposure therapy for avoidance. Your brain learns that being present for a small dose of closeness does not result in annihilation. It results in a text back. It results in a laugh. Over time, the brain updates its threat assessment file. It stops associating another person's presence with the loss of self. The third step is to explicitly visualize the version of you that stays. Our brains are prediction machines. If you only ever run the simulation of, I leave before I'm left, or I'll suffocate if I stay too long, your motor cortex will execute that script. You have to pre-write a new ending. Tonight, before you sleep, close your eyes and picture the moment that usually makes you flinch. Maybe it's them saying they miss you. Now, instead of seeing yourself deflect the moment with a joke, see yourself just sitting there with it. See yourself feeling the squeeze in your chest, and instead of running, seeing yourself take a breath and say, okay, that's nice to hear. This is not visualization as magical thinking. This is neuroplastic priming. You are carving a new riverbed for the water of your attention to flow through, so that when the real moment arrives, the path of least resistance isn't avoidance. The path of least resistance is stillness. And the fourth step, which is perhaps the most counterintuitive, is to stop trying to figure out if you like them. That question is a trap for people who pull away. Your brain will generate 1,000 reasons why they aren't right for you because your brain is a lawyer arguing the case for safety, not happiness. Instead of asking, do I like them? Ask yourself a different open loop. Ask, do I like who I am in the garden with them? Do I like the way my voice sounds when I'm not performing?
If the answer is yes, but I'm scared, then you are not dealing with a lack of love. You are dealing with a surplus of alertness. And that alertness is not a life sentence. It's just a habit of the nervous system. When you hold all of this together, the mental model to carry forward is the idea of the soft edge.
When you pull away, it feels like a hard line, a door slamming, a wall going up. But you don't need a wall. You need a soft edge, a boundary that breathes, a way of being close that doesn't require you to dissolve. You can be in the same room as someone and still have a distinct internal weather system. Their rain doesn't have to flood your valley. Their sun doesn't have to scorch your shade. You are learning not how to stay attached at any cost, but how to stay present without panic. That's the quiet work of living in a body that remembers the deep water while standing in the shallow warmth of the sun. And maybe the thought that stays with you tonight is simply this. You are not pulling away because you don't want to be seen. You are pulling away because you are afraid that if they see all of you, there won't be any of you left for yourself. But that's a lie the deep sea told you. The truth is that the surface doesn't erase the depth. It just lets the light in.